Dave has been instructing dog training students since 2013. During that time, he has helped hundreds of students achieve professional dog training certifications. In addition, his graduates have gone on to work in many fields within the dog training industry, including pet obedience, odor detection, personal and police protection, competition dog sports, and business ownership. Realizing his passion for dog training as a teenager, he enrolled in dog training school where he excelled and graduated with honors. His education didn't stop there, as he traveled to another school in Brazil to focus on training aggressive dogs. Before becoming an instructor for future trainers, he worked at Kennelwood Pet Resort for 12 years, training thousands of pets and instructing their owners on proper canine communication and leadership. Another passion of his is dog sport competition. In 2010, he won the Schutzen National Championship, earning the chance to represent the United States at the World Championship in Germany. He won the Protection Sport Association's highest score of the year. He's won multiple first place finishes and high-end trial awards in various dog sports, including American Kennel Club Obedience, Schutzen, and Protection Sport Association. Please welcome professional dog trainer, Dave Van Garderen. Thanks for joining us on another episode. Today I am here with Dave Van Garderen, professional dog trainer at Kennelwood Academy in Missouri. And today we're going to be talking about becoming a professional dog trainer. First, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So the first question, and something that a lot of people are very curious about, is what is the steps that somebody needs to take if they are interested in becoming a professional dog trainer? What are the routes that will help give someone the highest chances of being successful within that industry?
Well, that's a good question. There are a couple different ways. You could apprentice for someone, but the fast track and the best way to get a very well-rounded education is to come through a dog training school. Here at Kennelwood Academy, we teach a really broad spectrum of dog training, and our goal is, through that broad spectrum of dog training, is to teach our students how dogs think and learn so that they can eventually teach things that we didn't even teach them to do. So we'll do things like specific odor detection, agility, protection work, tracking, search and rescue, all kinds of different areas of dog training so that they really get an overall broad spectrum of how dogs think and learn.
Right, and that's a good point. And just because somebody is going to be, let's say, primarily focused on obedience or pet training, learning what you said, scent detection, search and rescue, tracking, these things have a huge impact because, number one, they're having a wider understanding of dogs and dog training. But number two, which I think is even more important, is the ability to be able to read a dog. And that's where it comes down to, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the art of dog training. Of course, the science, when we're looking at it, I always tell people the science is always the same. Well, what separates it is the different personality traits, the dog's motivation, their perseverance, and being able to read that. So doing all those different things, you know, at least for me, it helped me a great deal when I was learning to become a professional dog trainer. And I've mentioned you before on my channel and told people that I had an opportunity to learn from you. In fact, you were one of my first mentors when I was becoming a professional dog trainer. And something I noticed with you, because of course we want to be like our leaders, our teachers, our instructors, your ability to work throughout the day nonstop. I mean, during lunch, you're training dogs, you're working protection. I remember you'd always tell me like, hey, go get that dog. We're doing some protection training. You think that passion that you have is something that is necessary for somebody to be successful within this industry?
I think it definitely helps. I think passion for whatever subject you are, that you're studying is definitely going to help. And I think it's definitely driven me. But I think that you can do well. I don't think that you have to be a competitive dog trainer to do well. But kind of going back to what you were saying earlier of having like understanding or learning these different subjects, even if a student isn't necessarily interested in protection work or developing a protection dog, I still encourage those students to sit in at least on those classes, because if you learn how to develop aggression, so to speak, then it's going to help you learn how to dismantle it in a different sense also. So kind of, every behavior kind of has two sides of a coin. And in some cases you want it, in some cases you don't. And so really kind of learning all those aspects I think is going to be the key to success. Whether people compete or not, that's just one way to spread your name. It's definitely not the only way.
Behind you, you have a few trophies. What are those from? I think some of them you've competed nationally as well as internationally with Schutzen or IGP. You did AKC as well, or what other sports have you done?
Yeah, I've done a lot of AKC, obedience, Schutzen, IGP, that kind of stuff, the different names that it's constantly changing. I have won a couple of national championships in Schutzen. I competed or went to Worlds in 2011. I've won a handful or two highest scores in the country for PSA. So kind of mainly, as far as the competition side of stuff goes, AKC, PSA, and Schutzen is mainly what I've competed in.
So earlier you said that when you're training a protection dog, in a sense, it's developing aggression. Can you define what you mean by that? Because of course, just because a dog's trained in protection or a protection sport doesn't necessarily mean that the dog's aggressive, but rather the behavior that we're teaching them may appear to be aggressive, or the act of being aggressive, just like maybe a martial art expert. They're not an aggressive person, but they're learning certain skill sets.
Yes, that is a really good point to kind of put out there and to separate. Not every dog that does protection sports is actually gonna bite somebody or even has the ability to bite somebody. But some of these dogs definitely do. And that just depends on the person if they wanna go that route or not. But when we do go that route and we do make a serious protection dog, like a personal protection dog, for example, or a dog for the police department that is actually going to bite somebody, when we learn how to do that, then we can also learn how to kind of reverse that process with dogs that are biting people or that are being aggressive when they're not supposed to be.
And it could also do the opposite as well, teaching them to be more calm and relaxed because it builds up the confidence. It makes me think of something that Bart Bellin said, where he goes, if you teach a dog to come to you, you have to teach a dog to go away from you. Whatever you teach the dog.
The kind of what I was saying is that those two sides to the coin to each behavior. You have the in that case, the recall and then the going away. So same thing with aggression, being able to turn it on and off. Whether it's, like actual active aggression or if it's just a taught behavior.
And something you said earlier was you encouraged the students to at least watch during the protection training. So I'm assuming that the protection portion of the school is not one of the requirements in order to graduate?
Correct. The protection is an elective, so we tend to do it near the end of the day. We work through any student dogs that they have, whether they're puppies or adults. And then we also encourage our students to come to our club, which is on Saturday. So in essence, our students, if they want it, they're getting 6 days a week of education.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's amazing. And like we were saying earlier, being able to do these different aspects within dog training, I think helps make somebody a better dog trainer. Now, somebody who's interested in coming down to the school, because I have people constantly asking me, what schools do I recommend for somebody to become a professional dog trainer? And of course, you guys are on top of that list. What's something that someone should do in order to prepare? Would you say there's certain books maybe that they should read? Maybe they should practice certain things with their dog, or coming down clean slate is the best option?
I really think coming down clean slates is typically the best option. Although people that have experience can do very well, it really comes down to the person's how open-minded they are. I've had students that have a lot of prior experience that were professionals before they had their own dog training businesses before they came through school. And because of how open-minded they were, they did really, really well. But I've also had the opposite, where people were already dog trainers, they come through school and they already kind of know that the things that they have done in the past worked, so that kind of closes them off of new ideas, theories, and methods, and then they just kind of get stuck in that box and they never really learn anything more than they came in with.
Yeah, and that's something that could put anybody in a stop within their career. I mean, one of my favorite quotes, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Socrates, but he said, I study other philosophers like a spy in the enemy's camp. So it doesn't matter how long you've been a professional within your industry, we constantly have to continue to learn, to be open-minded, to learn different techniques and strategies that not only will make us better as trainers, but it will do more value to the dogs in which we're training and the people that we're helping.
I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. It goes right back to what you were saying before, in that dog training is science and art, because I can tell my students all day long and talk about science of dog training, but that doesn't teach them how to teach a sit. Like, after I teach them all the science, they still don't know, oh, this is how I'm going to go teach a sit, or this is how I'm going to go teach competitive heeling, or this is how I'm going to go track. So it's really like the science, like you said, never changes, but the art of it and how we apply that science is constantly changing. And if you're not adapting in the dog training world, then you're going to get left behind super quick.
Absolutely. And it's one of those industries that is constantly progressing. I mean, a dog trainer that I've studied and I've always been a fan of has been Michael Ellis. And in one of his videos, he even says, look at videos from 30, 40 years ago of dogs doing competitive obedience and look at them now. It's a completely different animal, how much the industry has evolved. Now, if you don't mind, can you take a minute and tell me how the school is structured? What would somebody expect when they come down to the school? Of course, anytime we're doing something new, at least for me, I try not to show it, but I'm always super nervous. Going to a new school, super nervous. Doing a competition, super nervous. What are some things that you could tell them that would either make it a little bit easier for them or give them that peace of mind of knowing what they're stepping into?
Well, I always recommend, if students can, to come out and do a tour. That way they come out, we show them around, they get to meet the staff, they get to see where they're going to be in school, they get to kind of like look at where they're going to be staying and stuff like that if they choose to stay in student housing. And that really alleviates a lot of pressure. We also have a few like move-in days before we even get started. So the whole kind of like getting to the part where we're actually learning or like, working with the dogs and stuff is going to take a little bit. So it's not high pressure. And we move along pretty slow in the beginning. Anytime that we start teaching something, like we introduce something new, we have a pretty lengthy process that we go through. So we're going to start off with like teaching a lecture, kind of just talking about and explaining what we are going to be doing. Then we will watch a video on a dog doing whatever it is. Then we will add in one of our personal dogs. We'll show what it should look like, things to look out for, things to do, what not to do. Then we'll get a puppy out from one of the students. We'll demo it with a puppy that has never done this before. And then we'll go through each individual student and work those dogs individually. Once everybody kind of has an idea of what it is, whatever we're teaching, then we move on to being able to do it kind of as a class and as with more distractions and stuff like that.
I like that you go through each puppy at a time. So when one puppy comes out, that student is participating with one of the instructors, yourself, or one of the other ones. And then the rest of the students, I'm assuming, are observing what's going on with the training.
And yeah, we find that really helps because each student, like, as you know, every dog is a little bit different. And especially in the introduction phases, that's where things are so critical. So having each student watch every other student's dog in the introduction phase can really bring a lot of extra learning to the table, rather than everybody just trying to do it themselves at the same time. And that also puts a lot more distractions in the training building.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, being able to see the other dogs, that's going to help develop the art side of becoming a professional dog trainer.
Yeah. I mean, it really, like you said, it comes down to experience and having seen it so many times before that you see it coming before it happens. And therein lies, the expert's timing is so much better than the beginner's. As someone that has 20 years of experience watching a new trainer can mark a behavior 4 times before the new trainer does. And that really is going to, slow down learning.
Now, you said that you watch the video, you go through the lecture, watch the video, then you demonstrate with one of your dogs or one of the other instructor's dogs, then you work each puppy. Then the students as a group start training their dogs individually, or what takes place after that for a certain exercise you'd be working on?
Yeah, then they work them individually for a certain amount of time, just kind of depending on the dogs and the individuals, how quick they all catch on and stuff. And then when they're ready, then we start adding in, more students and dogs at the same time.
And do they have an opportunity to work with clients as well? Because Kennelwood, of course, is also a dog training business aside from the school portion. So do they have a chance to work with clients from the dog training portion?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And Kennelwood Pet Resorts, our parent company, actually has 8 other locations. One of those locations holds 500 dogs itself. So, we really encourage our students to look for, and we'll help them find the best puppies to bring through the program that are able to do all of those different things that we're talking about. And then they'll get experience with dogs that don't want to eat, that are aggressive, that are dog aggressive, that are reactive, that don't like people, all these problem type of dogs and pets. We have 8 locations that we go to with our students, and each one of those locations has 2 or 3 professional trainers, and so there's a lot to be learned right there in those locations.
And that's something that we often say as dog trainers. Training pets is the bread and butter often of many dog training businesses. So I could see that being incredibly valuable.
It really is. It really gets them job ready. They really are ready to hit the ground running and start training dogs. So the program really does kind of all around get them ready for the job market.
And something that does separate somebody trying to learn by watching videos, maybe doing some online courses, in comparison to coming in and seeing it in person. I'm guilty of it myself. I try not to do this in my videos, but often we cut out some of the mistakes that maybe the dog makes because we don't want to show that. But when you're seeing it in person, there is no hiding, covering anything. They see the entire process, which of course, in my opinion, is going to make them more successful, especially right off in the beginning. Would you agree?
100%. I mean, all of the the social media videos, they tend to be what we all strive for. That is that's the goal of what we show. That's the goal. We don't typically tend to show all of the things that happen to get there, and therein lies the learning for the dog and for us and the students.
What would you say is probably one of the most common mistakes that a new student makes when they come down to the school?
Most common mistake that a student makes when they come down to the school. I would say probably a lot of students think that they should have a puppy or they need a dog to come to dog training school. And although, you do need a dog to come to dog training school, we want the right dog. And not any dog can become a protection dog. Not any dog, as you know, can become a service dog. So if we're looking for dogs or puppies that are going to fill all these categories, protection, tracking, obedience, agility, all that kind of stuff, then we need really specific dogs that can fill all of those, all those boxes. And so, like I said, we want to find the best puppies or the best dogs for the students so that they can have very versatile dogs that can fill all those requirements. And then we'll get them experience with those not so great dogs that want to bite and that don't want to eat and that are aggressive and reactive in our other locations. So coming through, with a blank slate and with ideally no dogs, or with a dog that doesn't have a whole lot of training but has a very low level of fear and really high level of drives, are ideal.
And if a student comes down without a personal dog yet, the instructors help find and identify the right dog for the program?
Definitely, yeah. We have a lot of lectures in the first few weeks on picking the right breed, the right dog for you, and then to set you up for the success in the program, but also for success after you graduate. That way the students have the right breed, the right temperament, and the right drives to, go do whatever it is that they're wanting to do when they graduate.
And that's an important note for people that want to train their own service dog or train a therapy dog or something like that. I mean, myself, I'm guilty of it. When I first came down to learn to become a dog trainer, my thought process was, you could train any dog to do this. Any dog has the ability. And unfortunately, that's simply not the case. Not every dog can do protection work. Not every dog can be a service dog. Not every dog can be a competition obedience dog. When you are looking to select a puppy for working purposes, regardless of what it is, what are some of the characteristic traits that you are trying to identify?
Well, like you said, it does depend on what you're looking for. Typically for the school, for puppies that are coming through the school or dogs that are coming through the school, because we have such a broad spectrum of, behaviors that we're going to be teaching these dogs, we tend to look for really low fear. So dogs that don't get scared quickly of, something dropping on the ground or something different in the room that they're not used to. Dogs are just self-confident. Drive is something also that we look for. So food drive, a dog that will want to eat all the time, ideally even when they're not hungry. So think of like a lab. A lot of labs kind of tend to be like that. And then prey drive, the dog's desire to play with a ball or bite a rag or something like that. Then we can look at compliancy, kind of how eager to please they are, so to speak. And so there's a lot of different kind of traits like that we're looking for, but the main ones would be low fear and high drive.
Yeah, and of course the high drive, because that's a motivational tool that you can use to get the dog to do certain behaviors, right? The more they want something that we have, the more they're willing to work for it. And contrary to popular belief, dogs don't do things just to make us happy, as a lot of people think. Now, as you said, sometimes some dogs do. I mean, of course, you got those labs or golden retrievers. There's certain breeds that just want to be around their human. But of course, we need to have some sort of motivating factor to get our dogs to do certain behaviors, which makes me think of a very common question. And this doesn't necessarily pertain to becoming a professional dog trainer, but it does, of course, deal with training dogs. People often say, I want my dog to perform just because I tell them to. I don't want to have to give my dog treats or food or something like that. What is your advice when somebody has that sort of mindset in the beginning?
I mean, it's understandable. I think that, I probably at one point was hoping for that as well. But as we, like you said, as we start to kind of understand dogs and we look at the science behind things, everybody, everything, every being, including humans, only do things for a reason. There has to be motivation behind it. That's why we go to work. That's why we don't speed. And so, learning how to apply all of our 4 quadrants of dog training is I think, imperative. If we kind of cut ourselves into just one box or 2 boxes, then we really get to the point where it's kind of like playing that, remember that hot and cold game that you used to play as a kid, where you're like, say hot as you're getting closer and cold as you're getting farther? It's kind of like that, but you can only say hot. Like, how much harder is that game if you can only use one motivation type? So
That's a perfect analogy.
if you can use 2 motivations, I'm going to get you there twice as quick as if I can only say hot or if I can only say cold.
And that brings me to another question. So the school teaches balanced dog training. And if we look at it, there's traditional, which is primarily based on just corrections. There's pure positive, which is primarily based on just rewards. And then balanced incorporates both of those. And I think you already pretty much answered the question perfectly by saying it makes it way more clear and the dog ends up learning faster, which makes a dog more confident. It makes them happy. It lowers those stress levels. Often people think, oh, if I do something like use any sort of pressure, then the dog's going to shut down, which of course can happen to maybe some very, very sensitive dogs.
Well, then you use too much pressure, right? And then you didn't do it right.
Perfect point. And if someone does start to do that, then what is the best option for them? Just take a step back?
A lot of times if we use pressure too soon with like a weak weaker-minded dog, then they'll shut down because they don't understand the pressure. The exact same thing will happen to a stronger dog if we way over pressure that dog. That's then the trainer using too much pressure. The pressure isn't the issue, it's the amount of pressure that's the issue. A tire needs a certain amount of pressure. If we overinflate, it's not going to be able to handle that pressure. It's going to blow up.
Now, something I meant to ask, I had a protection specialist on my last episode, and of course you're a protection specialist as well within dog training, and I meant to ask this, so I get to ask you now, which is great. When people are watching protection sports, if they don't know very much about it, you can see that the dogs are hit with clatter sticks or batons and things like that during the training. And of course, they're not hitting the dog very hard. However, there is value within that as far as the training. And it made me think of something. I don't know if you've seen this footage, but there's a video, I think it's on the front lawn of the White House from years ago. And the dog runs up to somebody who's in the property that shouldn't be there, and the person kicked the dog and the dog ran away. So that right there shows part of a failure, I would say, in the training. So can you explain what the importance is of doing things like using clatter sticks or using bottle curtains and different types of distractions that you see in these protection sports?
Yeah, it's actually not, we're actually not using them in a way to like distract or hurt the dog. It's all started off as a very young puppy, and it's basically desensitizing the dog to this stuff. So it all starts off with just making those noises, clattering, shaking the can curtain, things like that, and then like giving them the reward like giving them a rag to play with and to bite on and playing tug and that kind of thing. And then slowly over time, that pressure is just increased, and it never actually affects them in a negative way if you meter the pressure with the accessories appropriately. Yeah, so there it's just like desensitizing a dog to a vacuum cleaner, or when hunters desensitize them to guns. Dogs are gonna end up in the real world, like you said, with police dogs or military dogs, they're gonna end up getting to adversives, and if they have never encountered that before, then that's the type of thing that's going to happen. They're gonna probably, that fight or flight instinct is going to kick in. They've never dealt with being, striped with a stick before, and they're gonna head out. If we slowly, over a very long period of time, start tapping them with a stick and giving them a reward and building that, then pretty soon they really don't mind being hit. Just like martial artists don't like being hit, just like football players don't mind being hit. Not all impact is negative.
Dogs that do protection work, they love it. They really enjoy it.
Dogs that do protection work, for the most part, that is their favorite thing. That is definitely the most favorite thing. They're always going to choose protection over anything else.
Yeah, definitely. And I have another question I was just thinking about. As we were talking about earlier, always trying to learn more about dog training. I started reading a book, and one of the things that I have an issue with when I'm reading other dog trainer books is I find myself sometimes getting frustrated when I don't necessarily agree with what the person's saying in the book, but I still read it anyways because I want to make sure I stay open-minded and continue to learn. Well, this one that I was reading, he said that obedience doesn't fix behavioral issues, but I disagree. I think obedience often does fix behavioral issues. Now, at the school, a lot of what you're doing is you're teaching obedience, you're teaching how to train the dog to build their confidence. How does that transfer into behavioral modification or fixing behavioral issues?
I mean, it's with dog training, you're able to, or with teaching, traditional obedience, you're able to kind of manage the dog's behaviors a lot. And in turn, they end up learning what works and what doesn't work. And therein, a lot of times, it ends up fixing the behavior.
I thought that was a good one, though, because, when I'm working with dogs, and I have them in a stay and train program, I'm doing obedience, and people are often telling me, well, my dog runs out the front door. Well, obedience is going to help with that because I can tell the dog to sit. Oh, are you going to teach a wait command? I don't have to teach a wait command. What do you want your dog to do while they're waiting? I'd like them to lay down, so tell them to down. Often when dogs do behavioral issues, it's because they haven't been told what to do.
Right. They don't know what the right behavior is.
Exactly. And when we tell them this is what you do in this situation, this is what you do in that situation, they end up becoming way more confident. I was doing an interview with another dog trainer about 2 years ago, and she said, people are always just telling me what they don't want their dog to do. How about telling your dog what you do want them to do?
Yep. Yep. And there we go with those two sides of the coin again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that falls into that obedience. Obedience often does fix behavioral issues. Now, if we look at behavioral issues, I always say that there's 5 main behavioral issues that people have to deal with: fear, aggression, destructive, dangerous, or simply behaviors that we don't want the dog to perform. Are there any other ones that I may be missing?
No, I don't think so. But I think for most people, you really can kind of solve most things with just teaching 3 behaviors. And that would be walking on a leash, a climb or a place command, where they stay up onto something and just remain there, and then coming when called. I think with those 3 things, most people are going to be able to manage their dogs pretty well. And then from there on out, everything else is just cherries on the top. But I agree, management is kind of where I think the most of the general public falls a little bit short.
So do you have any advice for somebody who is, maybe they're not going to become a dog trainer, but they do want to do advanced type of obedience with their dog, whether they want to do herding, they want to join a local protection club, do AKC obedience, scent detection, and they're getting a brand new puppy. What advice would you give to them as far as what should they be doing with that brand new puppy to help that dog become successful with whatever sort of endeavors that they have for that dog?
That's a really good question. The best thing to do is, before you get the puppy, go to a competition of what you're interested in. So whether it's lure coursing, Schutzen, PSA, dock diving, Frisbee, whatever it is, go out there, watch the competition, talk to people that are doing well in the competition, and then from there, you're going to figure out where you should get your dog. And then at that point, when you have your puppy, start looking at, or maybe even before you get the puppy, start looking at joining a club that is either does that sport or at least, maybe specializes in that sport, or at least does it.
Awesome. And last question, for those out there that want to become a professional dog trainer, but they simply don't have the money at this point to go to a school and to learn from a professional like yourself, what advice could you give them as far as getting started in that journey of being a professional dog trainer?
I would probably say going back to, looking at apprenticeships or following, your channel on YouTube.
Or even maybe a local shelter or rescue or something like that.
Yep. Going and getting a job in the industry somewhere is going to help. Going and working for a vet or going and working at a kennel or whatever. If you're a really good employee, they may even send you to our school. We have some employers out there that are sending their good employees through school so that they come back and then they have a contract that trainer will work with them for a couple of years. And so then the employer has this student or this, trainer that's going to work for them for a couple of years. They don't have to worry about that. And the student gets an education.
How can people find you if they're interested in coming down to the school?
All of our information is on our website, kennelwoodacademy.com. We have a virtual tour up there. Our phone number is there. You'll be able to contact us if you want to come up for an actual tour. And also all of the information regarding our programs is there, as well as costs.
Perfect. And I'll make sure I put that information in the description. So if you're watching this, just go down, click on the link, and you'll be able to reach out to them at Kennelwood. Probably even get on the phone and talk to you for a moment, because you do talk to students that are interested in coming down, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep. All the time.
Perfect. What an excellent resource. Again, thank you so much for taking the time, Dave. I really appreciate it. I've always looked up to you as a dog trainer, and I believe a lot of my success within the dog training career has come from the opportunity of learning directly from you.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.